At exactly 8:17 on a bright Monday morning, a single father named Elias Mercer walked out of a small neighborhood bakery carrying the only breakfast he could afford that day. He had $12 left in his wallet, a nearly empty refrigerator waiting at home, and a 7-year-old daughter who needed new school shoes before the end of the week. But as Elias crossed the busy sidewalk, he noticed an elderly woman sitting alone on a wooden bench beneath a leafy tree. She looked exhausted, her clothes were worn, and she kept watching people walk past while pretending not to be hungry. Elias stopped. He looked at the warm breakfast in his hands, then at the woman, and made a decision that would eventually change both their lives. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness can create second chances, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Little Kindness Tales. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can travel much farther than we ever imagine. Elias was 36 years old and had spent the last 3 years learning how difficult life could become when you had to be both a father and a provider. His wife had passed away unexpectedly after a long illness, leaving him alone to raise their daughter, Millie. Elias never complained in front of his little girl. Every morning, he woke before sunrise, prepared her lunch, checked her school bag, and then went to work at a local appliance repair shop. His paycheck was modest, and after rent, electricity, groceries, school expenses, and transportation, there was rarely anything left. Still, Elias had one rule that he refused to break: Millie would never grow up believing that hardship meant a person had to become hard-hearted. That Monday morning, Elias had stopped at the bakery because the owner had offered him a discounted breakfast after he repaired the bakery's broken refrigerator the previous evening. He had bought 1 egg sandwich, a small fruit cup, and a bottle of water. It was supposed to be his breakfast before work. But when he saw the woman on the bench, something inside him changed. She looked to be in her late 60s. Her silver hair was untidy, her hands were trembling slightly, and beside her sat an old canvas bag with almost nothing inside. She wasn't asking anyone for money. She wasn't holding a sign. She simply sat there, trying to disappear among the morning crowd. Elias approached her carefully and offered the breakfast. The woman looked up with surprise, as though she couldn't understand why a stranger would notice her. She tried to refuse, but Elias gently placed the food beside her and told her through a warm smile that he had already eaten. It wasn't true. He hadn't. He had skipped dinner the previous night because there wasn't enough food left after making sure Millie had eaten. But Elias didn't want the woman to feel like a burden. He simply walked away toward the bus stop, hoping she would accept the meal. What Elias didn't know was that the woman had been watching him for several minutes before he ever noticed her. Her name was Eleanor Voss, and she was not who she appeared to be. For nearly 30 years, Eleanor had been one of the most influential businesswomen in the country. She had built Voss Meridian Holdings from a small family investment company into a global corporation with offices across several continents. Newspapers had once called her a financial genius. Business magazines had placed her among the wealthiest women in the world. Her signature had moved billions of dollars. Her decisions had affected thousands of employees. But that morning, Eleanor had no driver, no security team, no expensive coat, and no assistants surrounding her. She had deliberately left all of that behind. For weeks, Eleanor had been fighting a battle inside her own company. Several senior executives had been attempting to push her out of the organization she had built. They had manipulated financial records, isolated her from trusted employees, and created a complicated legal situation designed to make her look incompetent. Eleanor had begun to suspect that even people she trusted were involved. So she disappeared quietly, choosing to observe the world without anyone knowing who she was. That morning, she had spent several hours walking through ordinary neighborhoods, trying to understand something she had forgotten during decades of wealth: how people behaved when there was nothing to gain. And then Elias gave her breakfast. He didn't ask her name. He didn't ask why she was there. He didn't take a photograph. He didn't even wait for thanks. He simply saw someone who was hungry and helped. Eleanor kept the empty food container after finishing the meal. She stared at it for a long time, remembering the many years she had spent signing checks, funding charities, and attending formal events where kindness was often announced in front of cameras. Yet a tired father with almost nothing had given away his own breakfast without telling anyone. That afternoon, Eleanor returned to the bench. Elias was gone. The next day, she came back. He wasn't there. For several days, she searched the neighborhood, but Elias's morning routine had changed. His daughter had developed a fever, forcing him to take time away from work. His employer warned him that too many missed days could cost him his job. Elias spent nights worrying about rent and mornings pretending everything was fine for Millie's sake. Then another problem arrived. The appliance repair shop suddenly reduced its staff. Elias was let go. He walked home carrying his small toolbox, trying to hide the worry on his face when Millie ran toward him. She asked whether he had a good day. Elias smiled and told her they would figure everything out. That evening, he made a simple dinner from rice, vegetables, and the last pieces of chicken in the refrigerator. When Millie went to sleep, Elias sat at the kitchen table and calculated the money he had left. It wasn't enough. But the next morning, he woke up anyway. He printed several resumes at the public library and began searching for work. He repaired broken appliances for neighbors, carried boxes for a moving company, and accepted small jobs wherever he could find them. Some days he earned enough to buy groceries. Other days, he earned almost nothing. Meanwhile, Eleanor's situation was becoming more dangerous. Her legal team had discovered that the executives trying to remove her had been transferring company assets into hidden accounts. The evidence was complicated, and Eleanor needed someone outside her usual circle of wealthy advisors to help uncover what had happened. Her lawyers began searching for records, witnesses, and anyone who had recently interacted with her. Then Eleanor remembered the breakfast. She remembered Elias. She remembered the toolbox he carried. She remembered the logo printed on the side. A private investigator eventually traced the repair shop, but the business records showed Elias had already left. The search continued through employment databases, neighborhood records, and old invoices. Eleanor's legal team didn't know exactly why she was so determined to find him. They only knew that their client considered him extremely important. 3 weeks after that morning, Elias was repairing a washing machine for an elderly couple when two black vehicles stopped outside the house. He stepped onto the porch and saw several professionally dressed people approaching. One of them introduced herself as Mara Bellamy, senior counsel for Voss Meridian Holdings. Elias immediately became suspicious. He had never heard of the company. Mara told him that they needed to speak with him about Eleanor Voss. Elias's expression changed. He remembered the woman from the bench. He thought perhaps she had gotten into trouble and wanted her breakfast money returned. Instead, Mara explained that Eleanor Voss was one of the wealthiest business leaders in the country and that the woman Elias had helped that morning had been living quietly under a different appearance while dealing with a serious corporate crisis. Elias stared at her in disbelief. Then Mara said something that left him completely speechless. Eleanor wanted to meet him personally. Elias was taken to a quiet office building the following afternoon. He expected marble floors, enormous rooms, and people who looked like they belonged to another world. Instead, he was led into a simple conference room where Eleanor was sitting beside a window overlooking the city. She looked exactly as she had that morning on the bench, except now her silver hair was neatly arranged and she wore a simple dark blue suit. Elias recognized her immediately. Eleanor stood and thanked him. Elias told her that he hadn't done anything special. Eleanor disagreed. She had discovered that Elias had once worked as an appliance technician for a company owned by Voss Meridian Holdings. Several years earlier, his wife had received assistance from one of Eleanor's charitable programs during her illness. Elias had never known who had funded the program. Eleanor remembered the case because it had been one of thousands handled by the foundation. The connection was astonishing. Eleanor had unknowingly helped Elias's family years before. And years later, Elias had unknowingly helped Eleanor when she needed compassion most. But Eleanor wasn't finished. She offered Elias a position managing a new community repair and assistance program funded by her foundation. The program would provide affordable home repairs for struggling families, train young technicians, and help single parents find stable employment. Elias hesitated. He didn't want charity. Eleanor told him it wasn't charity. She wanted someone who understood what it meant to have very little and still choose to help someone else. Elias accepted the opportunity, but only after asking whether the position would allow him to keep helping people directly. Eleanor smiled and said that was exactly why she had chosen him. Months later, the program opened its first community center. Elias helped families repair broken refrigerators, heaters, washing machines, and other essential appliances at little or no cost. Millie sometimes visited after school, doing homework at a small desk near her father's office. She loved telling people that her dad had a special job because he helped people when they were having difficult days. One afternoon, Eleanor visited the center without announcing herself. She watched Elias kneel beside a single mother struggling with a broken refrigerator. He listened patiently, explained the repair, and made sure she understood everything before leaving. Eleanor smiled. She finally understood something she had forgotten while building an empire. Money could open doors. Power could change companies. Lawyers could protect fortunes. But kindness could reach places none of those things could reach. Elias had given away a breakfast worth only a few dollars. He never imagined that the person receiving it could change his entire future. And Eleanor never imagined that the greatest lesson of her life would come from a tired father who had almost nothing left to give. Years later, whenever someone asked Eleanor about the most important business decision she had ever made, she never mentioned a billion-dollar acquisition or a historic investment. She simply remembered a wooden bench beneath a green tree, a warm breakfast placed beside an exhausted woman, and a man who walked away without expecting anything in return. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs a little hope, and subscribe to Little Kindness Tales. Your support helps these stories reach more people who may need to remember that kindness still matters. And before we end, comment, kindness always comes back, if you believe that even the smallest good deed can change someone's life. Because sometimes, the person you help today may be the person who helps you tomorrow. Sometimes a simple meal is more than food. Sometimes it is a message that says, you are not invisible. And sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can travel across weeks, across lives, and even across a billion-dollar empire, until it finds its way back to the person who started it.